One of the two groups vying for the throne in House of the Dragon is a faction of House Targaryen known as the Greens. To understand the Greens, we first need to understand where we are at this point in George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. House of the Dragon is based on Fire and Blood, which details the Targaryen dynasty beginning 300 years before the events of the main series and main television show, with Aegon I's conquest of Westeros. The Greens trace their origins at the start of Viserys I's reign, which is where the events of House of the Dragon begin. Viserys I was the fifth Targaryen king to sit the throne. Loved by the common folk and nobles alike, he's described as a good-natured, albeit naive, ruler. His ascension is a unique, if not somewhat accidental case. The previous Targaryen king and Viserys' uncle, King Jaehaerys I, had a sudden crisis when his two sons and heir apparents, Prince Aemon and Prince Baelon, died. Aemon was the first to go, struck in the neck with a bow while attempting to quell rebellions down south, and shortly afterwards Baelon died unexpectedly from a burst belly, which appears to be a Maester equivalent to appendicitis. Jaehaerys suddenly found himself without a clear male heir, an issue that previous Targaryen kings hadn't had to confront so directly. I'll cover the Great Council in a later video, but the realm eventually decided that Viserys I, the first son of Jaehaerys' second son, Baelon, would succeed the old king as heir. The young King Viserys' reign is largely seen as peaceful, as Maester Gildain calls it the most prosperous era of the Seven Kingdoms. One notable tragedy in the king's family, however, was the death of his wife, Aemma Arryn, who passed in childbirth. With no apparent male heir, Viserys named his daughter, Rhaenyra, as his successor and quickly remarried the young Alicent Hightower. Alicent had been at King's Landing since she was 13 years old. She was described as clever and lovely, having arrived at King's Landing once her father, Otto Hightower, was named the Hand of the King for Old King Jaehaerys in 101 AC. Otto continued his service as Hand with Viserys, a king who is now being urged to remarry upon the death of his wife, Aemma Arryn. Remarry he did, and Viserys and Alicent were wed shortly afterwards in 106 AC. The term Greens developed thanks to the rivalry between Queen Alicent Hightower and Princess Rhaenyra, her daughter-in-law. It didn't take long for the two to take issue with each other at court. Queen Alicent was the king's new wife, and the two quickly had 4 new children, 3 of which were male and directly challenged Rhaenyra's legitimacy as the declared heir. First was Aegon, born in 107 AC, roughly a year after his parents' new marriage. Alicent and Viserys then had Helaena, Aemond, and Daeron. Bad blood quickly boiled between the queen and the Princess Rhaenyra, and this extended to their children, whose dragons were said to snap at each other, and the court in King's Landing. Those in the queen's corner were referred to as the Greens, in reference to the green colors of House Hightower that the queen would wear, while those supporting Princess Rhaenyra were known as the Blacks, as the princess would often dress herself in the black and red of House Targaryen. At the center of the Greens is Aegon Targaryen, later known as Aegon II. Aegon is described as handsome but pouty, and perhaps most importantly, somewhat indifferent to both his obligations as a prince and potential heir in the eyes of the Greens. His attention is less in politics, preferring instead to spend his time somewhat aimlessly. He's a frequent patron of King's Landing's brothels, drinks heavily, and as we see on the show, not really caring what he throws out his bedroom window at the common folk down below. One item central to Aegon, his identity, and the Greens as a faction is his dragon Sunfire. Described as formidable and huge, Sunfire had gleaming golden scales with pale pink membranes, golden fire to match his color. According to Maester Gildain, Sunfire was regarded as the most splendid dragon to ever fly in the skies of Westeros. It is not clear when Aegon bonded with Sunfire, but King Viserys was known to place dragon eggs in the cradles of he and Rhaenyra's children, so it's theorized Sunfire was placed in Aegon's cradle as a baby. Sunfire, while described as big, is therefore one of the youngest dragons by the start of the dance, and is likely around Aegon's age, at about 22. One key component to Aegon's character, and something I think the book and show demonstrate very well, is his apathy for rule. Despite his eventually challenging Rhaenyra, Aegon was never one who demonstrated ambition for the throne. Growing up, he seemed not only disinterested in responsibility, but he also actively avoided conflict at court and politics altogether. The other crucial characters that make up the Greens are Aegon's siblings, Helaena, Aemond, and Daeron. Helaena Targaryen was born shortly after Aegon in 109 AC. She's described as quiet but well-intentioned, plump, and happy. Helaena is bonded to Dreamfire, a light blue dragon with silver markings previously bonded to her older and now deceased cousin Rhaena Targaryen. Dreamfire is one of the oldest dragons at this time, behind only Vhagar, Vermithor, and likely the Cannibal, although the Cannibal's true age is unknown. Helaena is perhaps best known for her dragon dreams. Some Targaryens are described to have premonitions, where they can either willingly or unwillingly see into the future, past, and some bits in between. It's never quite clear if these are based in fact or part of the broader Targaryen madness. It's also considered quite the burden in the eyes of some, as the inability to distinguish between reality and dreams can lead to considerable confusion. Regardless, Helaena certainly possesses the characteristics of a Targaryen dreamer, as evidenced by Season 1 and 2 of House of the Dragon. In traditional Targaryen custom, Helaena was wed to her older brother Aegon in 122 AC. While Targaryens have extensive history marrying within the family, the move was seen by opponents as a political means to shore up Aegon's legitimacy as a true Targaryen worthy of the throne. Helaena did her duty, but the arranged marriage was not one born out of true love, and hardly a happy one. While we never get Helena's true thoughts on the matter, Aegon continued to drink and spend many a night on the Street of Silk, where he allegedly had a bastard child. Regardless, Helaena had 3 children with Aegon in 5 years, twins Jaehaerys and Jaehaera, as well as Maelor. Aemond One-Eye Targaryen is Aegon's younger brother, born in 110 AC. Although younger and about half Aegon's size, he is described as twice as fierce. This trait carried into adolescence as Aemond was bold, strong-willed, and hot-tempered. When he was 10, he traveled to Driftmark alongside the rest of the Targaryen family for Laena Velaryon's funeral. There, he snuck off and claimed the mighty Vhagar, the largest and oldest dragon now unbonded due to Laena's death. Afterwards, Aemond was caught by one of Rhaenyra's children, Joffrey, who Aemond promptly shoved into a pile of dung. A fight broke out with Rhaenyra's other children, Jason, Luke. Luke drew a knife and slashed Aemond's eye, giving him the infamous One-Eye nickname. He mostly stuck to an eye patch, but placed a bright blue sapphire in his now empty eye socket, and as we see later on, did not forgive Luke for this slight. The final sibling is Daeron the Daring Targaryen, born in 114 AC. Daeron is unique among the Green siblings in that he didn't grow up in King's Landing. Rather, he spent his youth in Oldtown, serving as a cupbearer and squire to Lord Ormond Hightower, Alicent's cousin and Otto's nephew. Daeron is described as clever, gentle, and the most popular of Viserys and Alicent's children. He flies Tessarion, a cobalt blue dragon who, despite being on the younger and smaller side, is a key asset for the Green Hightower army out of Oldtown. Other key allies for the Greens at court were Criston Cole and Otto Hightower. I'm going to save the bulk of Criston's characterization for a later video because I find it pretty fascinating, but suffice to say he was selected as a member of the illustrious Kingsguard despite his coming from a relatively inconsequential house near Dorne. Accounts vary in the books, but we see in the show that he not only makes some pretty short-sighted decisions, but also feels his back against the wall when it comes to the duties of a Kingsguard, one of them being chastity. He finds security and safety with Alicent Hightower, where he is promoted to Lord Commander and grows into a fierce warrior for the Green faction. Other members of the Green Council include Larys Strong, the Lord of Harrenhal and Master of Whispers, Jasper Ironrod Wild, the Master of Laws, Tywin Lannister, the Master of Coin, and Grand Maester Orwyle. The Hightowers certainly preferred their blood on the throne, while other Green Lords had developed close ties to this side of the Targaryen family and stood to maintain or grow their influence at court with the ascension of Aegon II. So where are we in the events of the show? Well, Aegon's feelings, wants, and wishes proved to be pretty irrelevant the minute King Viserys died in 129 AC. Upon hearing the news, Criston Cole sought out Aegon and, despite Aegon's reluctance, convinced the young prince to assume the throne as Aegon II. After taking up the ruby crown of the Conqueror and his sword Blackfyre, Aegon was hastily coronated in the Dragon Pit at King's Landing, and a race for support among the great houses ensued. Aemond flew to Storm's End and offered himself in marriage to the daughter of Lord Boros Baratheon. Rhaenyra, having the same plan, sent her middle child Lucerys at the same time, but could not offer a marriage pact. as Luke was already betrothed to his cousin Rhaena. Aemond, whose grudge against Luke did not go away after all these years, chased Luke out of Storm's End on Vhagar. Things got out of hand, and the big beast gobbled up Luke and his much smaller dragon, Arrax. The war began, with green support from key great houses like the Hightowers, Lannisters, and Baratheons. As we see in the show, Aegon quickly grew impatient with his hand Otto and replaced him with the much more militaristic Criston Cole. Cole went on a campaign through the nearby Crown Lands, gathering more green support by force, and eventually baiting Rhaenys and her dragon Meleys to stop him. Aemond and Aegon flew Vhagar and Sunfire into battle to kill her, but this proved a bold and risky move for the young king, as Aegon and Sunfire were grievously wounded in the process. Sunfire's fate is currently unknown in the events of the show, but Aegon was able to make it back to King's Landing alive, despite spending most waking hours in extreme pain and unable to really do anything. Aemond, however, wasted no time in declaring himself King Regent and, at least in the books, dons the ruby crown of the Conqueror. In the meantime, House Hightower gathered its banners under Lord Ormond and began marching east, with Daeron and Tessarion flying above. In the books, it is Otto Hightower who recruits the Triarchy to the aid of the Greens. However, in the show, we see it as Tywin Lannister who is sent east in an attempt to get the ships to Aegon's side. He appears to be successful. The Triarchy is moving west to try and smash the Valyrian blockade of King's Landing. Having regrouped after Rook's Rest, Aemond and Cole have since turned their attention to stopping Daemon in the Riverlands, with the ultimate goal of meeting up with the friendly Lannister host traveling from Casterly Rock. So that was an overview of the Greens, all the way up to the end of Season 2. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more House of the Dragon, Song of Ice and Fire, and Game of Thrones content. Thank you guys, and see you later.